Thank you. Perennial problem of being a small person. I need a footstool to assist me so that you can see me. Thank you, respected Chair, for those words with which we can think about and talk about countering violent extremism. I must start by thanking Sri Lankan Army, as all of my colleagues have been saying, that I've been indulged to so many, amenities, so many nice things that I'll have to let myself forget about it, because it's not every day you get invited by the Sri Lankan Army. Without further ado, I'll start my topic. It's relatively a very big topic. I'll be talking about countering violent extremism a little bit, and then additionally the role of regional organizations, more particularly SAARC and ASEAN. When the topic was offered to me and I was said that I have only 20 minutes to speak on this issue, I was thinking that how to put an elephant into a matchbox, and in this case actually 3 elephants into one matchbox. I have to fit in, I have to do some justice to all 3 of them. So I start a little bit with terrorism. We know that if we look at the initial ideologies, that we have to, human beings, as have been said by previous speakers, we are a social animal. We like to live in the groups, and we give up a certain aspects of our security, our freedom to the state to ensure so that there is no violence done against our existence. If we look at the philosophers starting from Locke, Rousseau, starting from Hobbes, we all talk about state as the legitimate holder of a security provider. However, people always have grievances. Some grievances they want to solve legitimately, some they do not want to solve through legitimate paths, and that is when terrorism happens. But as in the morning we have seen, there's an awful lot of discussion on terrorism. What is terrorism? What is countering violent extremism? Here we see, being an academic myself, we see this problem. We cannot define terrorism. One scholar has identified as many as 200 operational definition of terrorism. So where do we come to an agreement, and all nationalities and in international forums we can have an accepted definition of terrorism? So that is why, because of this definitional conundrum, we see like a spate of 5 different types of terrorist wave in the history. As you can see, one is anarchist wave, anti-colonial wave, the new left wave, the religious wave, and the radical wave. In the first 3 waves, the anarchist wave, the target was the statesmen, state officials, and the terrorists thought that by killing high officials will be able to change government policies. It didn't happen. It started in Russia. The culmination of it was the killing of Archduke Ferdinand, that resulted in the First World War. Then the anti-colonial wave, it was the spate of freedom fighters rising against their imperial powers. And then the third wave was the rising against capitalism. You will see, notice one sort of general issue here. All 3 spate of terrorism, the target was the state or state officials. Then begins the religious wave from 1980s, when your spectator is no longer the general people. Your audience is no longer the general people. You want to please God, and you want to kill in the name of religion. And in the third wave, the radical wave, as one of my colleagues said, that being radical is not the problem, but when you use violence to justify your radical motive, that is the problem. That is what happened, and we can see in Cambodia the Khmer Rouge, in which the disbelievers will be murdered, will be killed brutally. And then when we talk about countering violent extremism, we need to look at this, sort of a combination of the religious wave and the radical wave, where I don't kill only to please the God, but I murder anybody who doesn't believe in my ideology, my kind of religion, my kind of Islam. As Chair has pointed out, that there has been a distorting messages coming, distorting of Quranic messages, and that are spread, especially in Bangladesh. We have seen in the wake of 1st of July 2016 violence, Quranic verses are changed, and that is how that is presented to the youth, and they are being motivated to carry out this kind of violence. So here we need to look at this particular type of terrorism, where it is the religious fanaticism driven by the idea that I have to annihilate all the disbelievers. It doesn't matter if you are a Muslim or you follow my ideology, but unless and until you subscribe to whatever I'm saying, I have to sort of uproot you. And here we can see that whenever we are talking about countering violent extremism, we know it's not very easy to come to a definite definition, but the problem is that we need to see how the term terrorism was politicized, especially in the wake of GOT, Global War on Terror. The term itself was politicized, and therefore officially this term countering violent extremism was introduced by US administration under President George Bush in 2005. However, at the beginning it did not receive much popularity. It was applied operationally first after London 7/7 bombing and the Madrid bombing. And the problem again lies with CVE, as with the term terrorism, is how to sort of come to a definite sort of definition as well as definite understanding what do the terrorists want. Why am I talking about definition so much? Being an academic, definition is like a road post, a signpost. It helps me to see which way to go. And that is why I believe this is a daunting task before the international community to talk about terrorist intents and nature. What is intent? Religious intent, be that under Islam or by the neo-Nazis or the white supremacists. And the nature is annihilation. If you don't subscribe to whatever I'm saying, you have no right to exist in my planet. Then CVE actually looks at the nature of this new type of terrorism, and here we know the security sector alone cannot fight this kind of extremism. Here we need to look at the soft aspects of dealing with it. We need to look at the passive terrorist infrastructure. We need to target those. For example, their ideology. For example, how they are motivating, the youth specifically to carry out this kind of violence. And therefore, we need to fight that the way, the method indoctrination takes place. So therefore, only security sector cannot fight. They can try the terrorists, but we have to look at more at the micro level and the meso level. What are we talking about when we are talking about micro level? We are talking about individual people. As one of the previous speakers said, that each terrorist narrative is different. So we have to look at that. Not only that, we have to look at the civil society. We have to look at the role of the imam of the mosque or the educational institutions. What are the ways that one gets to indoctrinated? And then at the meso level, we have to look at the society in general, and then we have to connect this macro level, micro level and meso level to find out effective policy. Be mindful of one thing, this may take various paths in various countries because all of our narratives are not the same. And then there are other works to be done at the tertiary level, that is after the fact level, after the terrorism has taken place or violent extremism has taken place. And secondary level, those who are displaying the syndrome, we have to target them. And at the primary level, even before, we have to identify who are the people at risk. Yes, economy cannot always be the driver to terrorism because we have seen how neo-Nazis and how white supremacists work in America. Education, level of education is not always the marker. In some cases, it can be lack of education the marker, but not always. So it has to be a case-specific sort of address. So here, after sort of giving you a general idea about what I'm going to talk about, what is CVE is, I'll rather move to the role of regional institutions. In fact, the CVE approach to countering violent extremism is first seen in Europe. Here in 2003, UK launched its counter-terrorism strategy contest, in which we can see that it also added the area of prevention. It dedicated preventing people from becoming terrorists or even supporting terrorists. And this is also sort of effective. It has also been applied in some other European countries as well, and gradually the model is being applied indigenously in South Asia as well. There was also a European Union Declaration on Combating Terrorism adopted on March 25, 2004, and the EU Plan of Action Combating Terrorism later the same year. The concept of radicalization, that whether we are talking about violent extremism or radicalization, these became very prominent within the EU circles, and the European Commission established the expert group on violent radicalization in 2006. Let me tell you, in Bangladesh now we see a violent extremist not violent extremist, but countering violent extremist group is coming to Bangladesh to teach us about a lot of nitty-gritty. So Europe has, EU in particular has taken a lot of interest and to enable the countries who need help, them to launch specially training modules. And the UN Office of Drugs and Narcotics, they have also taken initiatives and they visit a lot of South Asian and Southeast Asian countries to take up all those activities. Now more particularly to South Asia. Sitting here in Colombo, we know that South Asia is a prominent region, gradually not only because of the countries who are looking at, who are gradually being important in global arena, but also in economic perspective because of China's OBOR and India launched its own New Belt initiative. We can see that how South Asia is increasingly important from security and economic perspective as well. It is also a region which is a frontline region in countering violent extremism, and let's not forget the... 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes? Okay. Okay, in South Asia, I'll go to the approach of countering violent extremism. First, SARC adopted an anti-terrorism convention in 1987, an additional protocol to the convention in 2006. Second, there are 3 SARC desks were established in 1992, 95, 2014 to monitor drug offenses, terrorism offenses, and cybercrime respectively. In the third stage, SARC conference on cooperation in police matters began in 1996 to enable the police officers and of their representatives to develop a network for intelligence sharing. Then there was a talk about SARCOPOL as well, but it did not work out. In fact, in SARC countries there, including Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, there are effective policies to counter the sort of enactment of foreign soldiers as well as the money laundering schemes, to prevent the money laundering schemes. In Bangladesh, I would particularly like to mention one area. If you see in Bangladesh, there has been a Think Twice, Act Wise program. It has been launched by a student of University of Dhaka, and it has won a global competition on how to sort of motivate your youth so that terrorism can be prevented in this region, and it has won the global competition that has been given by America, more particularly by the White House. Then in case of Southeast Asia, we can see a different kind of changes, whereas before people were mostly motivated to go and fight in Afghan fights, but now they are mostly sort of motivated by the pull factors, which is that they want to go to fight, but they don't want to come back. Although there has been sort of a relatively less number of people participating from Southeast Asia to Iraq and Syria, but this has certainly changed, especially after the audio message from Abu Muhammad al-Adani in May 2016, urging those who cannot travel to Iraq and Syria to organize terror attacks inside their countries. But how the sort of Southeast Asian countries are responding to this problem? As we can see that there are steps taken both at the national and regional level. Special ASEAN ministerial meetings on the rise of radicalization and violent extremism on October 2, 2015. ASEAN Directors Generals of Immigration Departments and Heads of Consular Affairs Divisions of the Ministries of Foreign Affairs on the prevention of the movement of foreign terrorist fighters in 2016. And there are ASEAN regional dialogues on countering violent extremism in 2016. There has been a number of at the national level, sort of white papers and national number of activities taken up. But here, in fact, one thing that I would like to point out about how Indonesia is countering violent extremism in their country, one was the 3-day training focused in the prisons. This is the second one that took place in February 2017, understanding radicalization to violent extremism among prisoners, managing violent extremism in prison environments, and developing the role of frontline prison staffs in countering violent extremism. But the civil society have taken up even more vibrant role. There are two groups who are working on this, two traditional groups, the traditionalist Nadalatul Ulama and the modernist Muhammadiyah. But the problem is that the traditional groups are often misunderstood by the general people. They seem to be representing a particular sort of area, particular area of thought. That is why there are several other groups who are working, as well as Indonesian police have much publicized use of key JI military militant figures who have disengaged from violence. They come, they talk with people, they share their experiences, and they say that how to counter violent extremism in the society. There is also interfaith debate organized in Indonesia. There are activities through internet, particularly Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. However, there must be a follow-up via personal face-to-face contact is crucial through effective engagements with the creative industries and social enterprises. Then there is also, there are white pages. Okay, I'll just finish. I'll just go to my concluding observation. Actually, this is a former Al-Qaeda recruiter in the United States explained radicals and recruiters love Islamophobia. It drives recruitment. So this is where I think we need to talk about when we are talking about violent extremism. We need to see that how there has been a misunderstanding about religion and how there has been sort of an idea that it is mostly coming from a particular religion. This is where we need to look at other areas as well, other religion and other sort of groups such as neo-Nazis or white supremacists, that terrorist ideology sort of thrives on that, and they play instrumental role in inculcating terrorism. So terminating the perpetrator is not enough. If you remember one famous song by John Lennon, life is what happens when you are sleeping. So when the Soviets left Afghanistan and the Americans left Afghanistan, we thought, our problems are over. We have given arms to Mujahideen to fight the Soviets. Now the Soviets are not there. We are all fine. But no, it is what happened after we sort of left the guns and we did not take responsibility for them. So so that is why John Lennon's song we must remember, and we must need to think that how we can take some effective measures at the community level, civil society level, school level. Thank you.